Good morning, guys. Miss Messer here. Today we're going to talk about negative exponents. And so if you're cohort A, this should be Tuesday, January the 12th. And if you're cohort B, this should be Friday's lesson, January the 15th. All right, before we start talking about these problems that you see on this paper that you should have, we're going to talk about what the negative exponent rule is. And what it does is says that we can't have any negative exponents. So anytime you are going to be asked to simplify, it's going to probably say in here your answer should contain positive exponents only. And so what that means is anything that's got a negative exponent left in the answer will be wrong. And so the rule here is that you need to move negative exponents. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So if you will, flip your paper over. And I'm going to put some little rules and some notes and some review on the back side, because really this is going to have your adding, it's going to have your multiplying and dividing and distributing and all sorts of things all mixed up on this page. And then they also throw in some negative exponents. So I want to make sure that we can recall all those other rules that we have learned so far. So again, negative exponents, you're on the back side of your worksheet. You can't have negative exponents, so we move them. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So I'm going to put, for example, if you have a to the negative fourth times b. And so that may be what your answer was, or maybe that's how the problem was originally given to you. So if you take a look, you should automatically see this negative exponent, okay? So I can't have that negative exponent. So what we do with it is we move that variable term that's got that negative exponent down to the bottom, because all of these without fractions, they're understood to have a 1 on the bottom, and so this a is just going to drop down to the bottom. So I'll show you what that looks like. B stays because these variables are able to be separated. They're not super glued together. So B has a positive 1 exponent. Remember we talked about that invisible 1. And so because it's positive, it's going to stay on the top. The A has a negative exponent, so that's going to move down to the bottom. And when you move it, the exponent becomes positive. Okay, do you see how that works? Let's take a look at another example. So if I have, let's see here, x to the third, y to the negative second, and z to the negative fifth. Okay, so copy that example down. X cubed times y to the negative second all over z to the negative fifth. So you have an upstairs and a downstairs, a numerator and a denominator. And so what you have to do is you have to find those negative exponents, because I can't keep them in my answer. And I don't have any of the same letters. So we'll talk about in just a second what happens if I have multiple x's or more than one y and I need to combine those. You would combine those first, then you would rearrange your negatives around. All right. So I don't have anything I can combine, so all I have to do is take care of these negative exponents. Can't have them, so I need to move them. If it's upstairs, it's going to go downstairs. So the y will go downstairs. The z would go upstairs. Okay, so all you're doing is moving from the numerator to the denominator or vice versa. So what would this look like? Well, x is going to stay because it was a positive 3, so it does not move. Y goes to the bottom and becomes a positive squared. You with me? Z was negative 5, so now I move it to the top and it becomes a positive 5. And that's your answer. Again, I have all 3 different letters, so I couldn't combine anything. Let's take a look at one more example. Say I have a to the negative third, b to the negative second, and c to the fifth. All right, so copy that problem down. And if you notice, I have some negatives here. A is negative and B is negative, and they're both upstairs. So because they're both upstairs, they need to drop downstairs. C is downstairs. C does not move. C will stay on the bottom because it's not got a negative exponent. So the C would stay on the bottom. B would fall down and become a positive squared. A would fall down and become a positive cubed. But that leaves me nothing upstairs. So what would I need to put up there? A1. And that is that. So if it's negative, move it. If it's on top, move it to the bottom. If it's on the bottom, move it to the top. If it's positive, it stays wherever it's at, whether it's upstairs or downstairs. Do not move the variables that have a positive exponent. Only move the variables with a negative exponent. Is everybody clear? All right. Some other things we need to look at is if you have to combine. And if you are multiplying, remember you add exponents. So a little review here. When you're multiplying, you add exponents. You multiply your big numbers, those coefficients, but the exponents you would add. If you're dividing, it's what you guys learned yesterday, you would subtract exponents. You're going to have to be careful here when you're subtracting exponents now that we have negatives. Some of us don't subtract very well, so a calculator might become your friend. So you might want to have Desmos nearby, or your little small 4-function calculator that you have from the dollar store. Subtracting when you have negative exponents can be a little troublesome for some students. Some folks will make their mistakes here, but a calculator hopefully will fix you. You have to remember that if you're subtracting a negative, that really means to add. Okay. And then, of course, you have the parentheses with the exponent on the outside. That means you would distribute. Distribute means to multiply exponents. All right, so these are the rules that we have studied so far. And so we are going to now take these rules and we're going to apply them to the problems on the other side of this worksheet. And again, be super careful when you're subtracting exponents. We'll look at some examples. And adding, that's if you have everything up on top, you're going to add. If you have a fraction, then you're going to subtract. And of course, we'll just go through a whole bunch of different problems on the other side here. And then after this lesson today, you will do a little quizzes to check your understanding. Okay, so flip your paper back over to the front here. We've got several different types of problems. How many are there? 21 problems. And they kind of go over a little bit of everything. So the negative exponent rule, move negative exponents. You can't have them. If it's upstairs, move it down. If it's downstairs, move it up. Everything is not super glued together, so you can definitely move A's away from B's. You can move numbers away. If your coefficient is negative, like on number 3, if you notice this coefficient's negative, that's not a negative exponent. So we're not going to move that -7. So we'll talk about that when we get to it. All right, so number 1, you have x to the -5th. Can't have a negative exponent, so we're going to move it to the bottom. Draw yourself a fraction line. For all these problems, I always just draw a fraction line and just kind of disperse stuff to the top and to the bottom. All right, so the x goes to the bottom with the exponent. What goes on top? I need something up there. What would go up there? That's right, a placeholder where you're going to use a 1. And that's it. That's the answer there. Questions? Okay. Number 2, again, coefficients and variables, they're not super glued together, so determine which one contains the negative exponent and move it. And so if you notice, the m has the negative exponent, so it's going to move to the bottom. Again, I always draw my fraction line, and then I, put my stuff where it needs to go. 3 stays on top, m had to go to the bottom, and now the exponent is positive. Questions? Number 3, coefficient is negative. That's okay. The only thing that's got a negative exponent is the a. So the a is going to move. Everything else stays. Again, draw yourself your fraction line. Move the stuff that needs to move. The only thing that's moving is the a. So the -7b cubed stays. A falls down to the bottom and becomes a +4. A to the +4. And that's it. So those problems are just having you move your negative exponents. You can't have them, so you're going to move them. The next row is having us apply our math rules that we have learned previously that we wrote down on the back side here. When you're multiplying, you're going to add your exponents. When you're dividing, you subtract your exponents. Be careful because there's going to be negatives involved. And if you have parentheses, you're going to multiply your exponents because that's where you are distributing to the stuff that's inside. Make sure that if you have a coefficient, you raise it to that power. So it would be that number raised to the 4th power, for example, or the 3rd power, whatever your outer exponent is. Okay, so let's take a look at number 4. We're multiplying here. Why don't you give it a try? See what you can come up with. All right, think you got something? If you multiply the big numbers, you're still going to treat your big numbers just like you always have. So this says 6 times -3, that's -18. Your exponents, you're going to add them because that's the rule when you're multiplying. You're going to add the exponents. So 8 plus -7. Be careful here, your signs are different. Subtract, keep signing the bigger number, or use a calculator. So 8 plus -7 is +1. Do I need that +1? No. Would I put that +1? It doesn't matter. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Most times I don't. Questions? Multiply those big numbers, add your exponents. Number 5, you have parentheses. What do you do when you have parentheses? If you said distribute or if you said multiply, you're correct. Be careful here. I'm not going to say 3 times -2 is -6. This says 3 to the -2nd power. What in the world is that? You can put that in your calculator and it will tell you what that is. I'm going to write this a little bit smaller because I'm going to have to rearrange because I already see a negative exponent. So that's -2 as the exponent on that 3. Multiply your exponents. 3 times -2, -6. Can you have negative exponents? No. Where do I put those negative exponents? That's right. This has to go to the bottom and this has to go to the bottom. So this becomes, draw your fraction line, 3 squared on the bottom. Can I go ahead and fix that 3 squared? Yes. What is 3 squared? 9. And then x to the +6. What goes upstairs? A 1. Because if you put in your calculator 3 to the -2 power, let me see if I can pull up my Desmos for you. So on my Desmos here, that's as big as it's going to get. All right, so if I put 3 and I do, let's see here, how am I supposed to get my exponent up here? That one, but I want it to be negative. Can I squeeze a negative in there? Boom. Okay, so it gives you 0.111111. Remember that little circle on the left side there with the fraction in it? If I touch that, it changes it, so it's 1/9. So 3 to the -2nd power is 1/9, and that's what I have on my paper. Whoops. That's what I have on my paper, 1/9, and then x to the 6th had to go down to the bottom as well. So it's best written with 1 over top of all of the 9 times x to the 6th. Questions? Number 6, just like number 5. Try it. Give it a go. I'll wait for you. All right, so you should have done the same thing as we did on number 5. You're going to distribute. So this is 5 with a -2. No, that does not equal -10. That says 5 to the -2nd power. If you put that in your calculator, like I just showed you on Desmos, it'll tell you what it is. But I'm not even going to use a calculator. I'll do just like I did on number 5. Multiply your exponents on the y's. 2 times -2 is -4. Can I leave it like this? No. Negative exponent moves. Negative exponent moves. Draw your fraction line. 5 squared goes to the bottom. What is 5 squared? That's right, 25. So I'm going to make that a 25. Y goes to the bottom and becomes a +4th power. Need a placeholder on top. What do I put? 1. Make sure you take good notes here because these are going to help you do your remote assignment this week. So if you have to, make additional notes on the side. Use this paper to help you because your homework looks just like it, just different numbers, same process. Try number 7. Distribute that little -2. Move your negative exponents. See what you come up with. I guess you could have paused the video. I'm just sitting here staring off in space thinking. All right, so here we have to be careful that 8's got a negative in the front. So I'm going to say negative 8 in parentheses with the negative 2 because I'm going to distribute. You have to be really careful with these coefficients that are negative. They're so picky. All right, the x's, multiply the exponents, you get negative 10. Y, multiply your exponents, you get positive 8. Hopefully you remember to move anything with a negative exponent, which is that negative 8 with the negative 2 on it, and x with that negative 10 on it. So the y doesn't move. So when I draw my fraction bar, y stays on top, like that. It didn't move. The 8 squared goes to the bottom. What is negative? Because this is going to become a negative 8 squared. What is negative 8 squared? What's negative 8 times itself? Did you say 64? You are correct. So just make that a 64. Negative 8 to the negative second power. And if you're not sure, remember that's what Desmos comes in handy. But you have to remember everything you can't do on a calculator because your EOC is not all calculator active. But for now, I can give it a go here. And this was a negative 2, so I got to manipulate that somehow. Hold on. Here we go. And so I hit that little fraction bar and I get 1 over 64. And that's what I have. You can put the 1 up there. I'm not going to because I know it just doesn't need to be there. But 64 on the bottom is the same thing as 1 over 64. And then x to the 10th. Move to the bottom as well. All right, we good so far? Number 8, you're multiplying. What's the rule for multiplying? Do you remember what do you do with your exponents when you're multiplying? You're going to add them. So try that one. Okay, add your A's, add your B's, and add your C's. See what you come up with. And I'll just sit here and highlight my answers for these previous problems. Add your A's, add your B's, add your C's. If you end up with any negatives, what do you do with those negatives? Move them to the bottom. All right, so if I add my A's, I get negative 5 plus 7 carefully adds to a 2. My B's, 8 plus negative 3 adds to give me a 5. And my C's, negative 12 plus 7 gives me a negative 5. Can I keep my answer like this? No, you can't have negative exponents. So who's negative? Just the C is going to go to the bottom. So draw your fraction bar. A squared, B to the 5th stays. C goes to the bottom, and it magically becomes positive. Did you get it right? Fantastic. Number 9 has the parentheses. What do you do when there's parentheses? You're going to multiply. So first multiply by those outer exponents. Then add your x's, add your y's. If you end up with any negatives, move them. Give that one a try. Distribute first. And then add your x's, add your y's, and move your negatives. All right, so when you distributed, you should end up with x to the negative 4th. Fix it if you missed it. Y to the negative 6th. Second set of parentheses, you should have x to the negative 15th and y to the negative 12th. Does everybody go with that? All I did was multiply my exponents by distributing. Think parentheses, distribute. Distribute means to multiply. All right, now I'm ready to add my x's and add my y's. So when I add my x's, negative 4 plus negative 15, because the multiplication rule is to add exponents, that's why I'm adding. X to the negative 19th. Add my y's, negative 6 and negative 12 is negative 18. Can I leave my answer like that? No. So I'm going to move my x because it's negative and move my y because it's negative. So draw your fraction bar. X moves to the bottom, becomes positive 19. Y moves to the bottom, becomes a positive 18. I have nothing upstairs, so what do I put? A 1. Very good. So there is my answer for number 9. Did you get it right? Fantastic. Fix it if you missed it. Number 10. Now we're getting into some distributing and then some addition. Remember, in order to add, the variable and exponents must match. And you do not add exponents when you're adding. The only time you add exponents is if you're multiplying. It's just the rule. The product rule says to add exponents, combine like terms. You do not mess with the exponents. All right. So first I have to get rid of these parentheses, so I'm going to distribute. So go ahead and distribute on your paper. Tell me what this first set of parentheses would be. And then do the second set. So when you distribute, you get 4 to the negative second. We'll fix that in a minute, because that is not negative 8, nor is it negative 16. It's special. X to the negative 6th, y to the negative 12th, plus, second set of parentheses is 2 to the negative 3rd. Again, I'll fix that in a minute. I don't want to multiply that and get negative 6 because that would be wrong, and I don't want to say that that is negative 8 because that's also wrong. All right, so x to the negative 6th, y to the negative 12th. Now you want to move all your negative exponents, which appears to be everything. So everything's going to drop to the bottom. And because everything drops to the bottom, I need to put a 1 on the top. It's my fraction bar. 4 squared is 16. X becomes positive 6, y becomes positive 12. Plus 2 to the 3rd power. What's 2 times 2 times 2? 8. So I have my fraction bar. Everything's moving to the bottom. So I put my 1 on the top. 2 cubed is 8. This is x to the 6th, y to the 12th. Now, what do you notice about both terms? They match, absolutely. But can I add when my denominators aren't the same? Oof, this problem is wonky. I'm going to use my calculator here. What is 1/16 plus 1/8? Let me use my calculator. 1/16 plus 1/8. Hit my little fraction bar. 3/16. So I cheated a little bit. I used my calculator. I could have found a common denominator, which would have been 16, so that 1/8 becomes 2/16. 2/16 plus 1/16 is 3/16. Easy enough. So I am running out of room on this problem, aren't I? So this is 3/16. X to the 6th, y to the 12th. Because remember, when you're adding and subtracting like terms, you do not mess with the exponents. The exponents stay exactly the same. So this is going to become 3 over 16x to the 6th, or excuse me, yeah, y to the 12th. My brain's not always working as much as it should. Questions? All right, so that is the answer for number 10. Number 11, now we're getting into some subtraction problems. If you notice, all of these have fraction bars in them because they have a fraction bar in it. That means division. Division rule from yesterday means to subtract your exponents. All right, so number 11, we're going to subtract. And do you remember if it's top minus bottom or bottom minus top, or does it even matter? It does matter, and it's always the top minus the bottom. So here I'm going to say 4 minus 6. What is 4 minus 6? Negative 2 is correct. So this is h to the negative 2. Can I have negative exponents? Nope. So I'm going to drop it to the bottom. Draw your fraction bar. H squared goes to the bottom. And then, of course, 1 goes on the top because there was nothing left up there. But I understood 1. And there is your answer. Try number 12. Be careful here. You got negatives as well. So subtract carefully. And then if you end up with a negative, move it to the bottom. I'll wait for you. So you should have subtracted negative 2. Oops, let me use the right pen here. Negative 2 minus 7. So if you needed some help there, you could have put that in the calculator. Negative 2 minus 7 is what? Negative 9. Can I have negatives? Nope. So I had to move that to the bottom, which gives me 1 over k to the positive 9. 1 over k to the positive 9. Did you get it right? Fantastic. Number 13, what do you do with that 14 and the 7? Do you subtract them or do you divide them? That's right, you're going to divide. So what is 14 divided by 7? 2. Then you're going to subtract exponents. Be careful here when you're subtracting these exponents. This is 4 minus negative 2. Put that in your calculator as 4 minus negative 2. Or you don't need a calculator. We know 2 negatives equal a positive. So a minus a negative is a plus plus. So what's 4 plus 2? Positive 6. Did I end up with any negative exponents? Nope. So I don't move anything. That is my answer. So be super, super careful when you are messing with negatives, especially when you're here, when you're trying to subtract them. Okay? So be extra careful here. That was 4 minus negative 2 plus plus. Be extra, extra careful when you're subtracting negatives. Again, use a calculator or just remember the plus plus. And remember to divide those big numbers. So number 14, try that one. Divide the big numbers. Write it down. Subtract your exponents. Write it down. If you have any negative exponents, move it. All right, so when you divided, you got negative 24 divided by 3 is negative 8. Again, be careful here when you are subtracting. This is 5 minus negative 2. That becomes a plus plus. What is 5 plus 2? 7. Do you have any negative exponents? No. Do I need to move that negative 8 because it's negative? No, it's not a negative exponent. So this is my answer. You only move variables or numbers that contain negative exponents. All right, try number 15. Subtract those B's and subtract those C's. Remember that C on top has a 1. If you end up with any negatives, move them to the bottom. All right, so if you remember, 2 take away 2 is 0. Anything to the 0 power equals a 1. So this is going to cancel and give me a 1. And then when you subtract these C values, you get 1 minus 5. What's 1 minus 5? Negative 4. Can you have negatives? Nope. So we're going to push that C to the bottom. Fraction bar, 1 stays on top, C goes to the bottom. So it's 1 over C to the 4th. Number 16, try that one. Subtract your x's, subtract your y's. If you end up with any negatives, move them. Subtract your x's, subtract your y's. Move your any negatives after you're done. So you always want to take care of your parentheses first, combine your like terms, and then move any negatives. And that's all we're doing here. I don't have any parentheses, so now I'm trying to combine my like terms. You have to be careful. Sometimes you have to add, sometimes you have to subtract. If you're multiplying, you add. If you're dividing, you subtract. And then you would take care of any negatives at the end. All right, so my x's, 4 x's take away 2 x's, is x squared. Negative 3 take away 2. What's negative 3 take away 2? Negative 5. Be careful there. Use a calculator to help you. Negative 3 take away 2. Both negatives add keep their sign. All right, can't have a negative exponent, so the only thing that moves is the y. Draw your fraction bar. X was good, so it stays. Y had to move because it was negative. So there is your answer on number 16. Try number 17. Actually, if you would, because the rest of them are all basically the same type of problem, if you would, go ahead and pause the video and then unpause it once a majority of these students are finished, and I will go over the answers with you. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and then unpause when you're done. All right, welcome back. Hopefully you had time to finish these 5 little problems. And so the first one, you wanted to divide the big numbers. So 32 divided by 8 is 4. Subtract your A's. Be careful here. Remember, there's that negative. So this is 5 minus negative 2. Ooh, just like the one above it. So that's going to become a plus plus. So hopefully you put down A to the 7th. So be careful when you are subtracting, especially when you're trying to subtract a negative. Is everybody good with that? Subtracting a negative makes it a plus. All right, and then the B's is negative 3 minus 6, which is negative 9. Can't have a negative exponent, so hopefully you took care of that. And so you ended up with an answer of 4. A to the 7th stays. B moved to the bottom. Did you get it right? Fix it if you missed it. Number 18, 36 divided by 12 is 3. X didn't have any friends to combine with, so I'm just going to write it down for now. The Y's you're going to subtract because one's on top and one's on the bottom. 8 take away 7 is 1. Can't have any negative exponents, so the X moves to the bottom. 3 stays, Y stays, X moved to the bottom. How'd you do? Fix it if you missed it. All right, number 19. 15 does not divide by 18, but I can reduce that. And so when I reduce that, they both can go by what, 3? So I can divide both by 3, so that gives me 5 on top. And I'm going to go ahead and draw my big fraction bar here so I can go ahead and disperse stuff. And 6. My A's, 1 A take away an A is no A's left. My B's, let's see here, 5 take away 3 is 2. And my C's, 8 take away 9 is negative 1. Can I keep it like that? No, I have to move that C to the bottom. So I'm just going to move my C to the bottom. So hopefully that is what you had for your answer. 15 divided by 18 reduces to 5/6. B's become squared. C becomes to the negative 1, so we moved it to the bottom. The A's canceled out. Fix it if you missed it. Number 20. You want to divide those coefficients. Negative 4 divided by 8 is not negative 2. It is negative 1/2. So again, I'm just going to draw my little line here. So I got my negative 1/2. P's, I have 1 take away 2. For my P's, I have 1 take away 2, which is negative 1. Well, you can't have negative exponents, so where does it go? To the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and move all at one time here. My Q's, 5 take away 2 is 3. It's positive 3, so it stays on top. My R's, 3 take away 10 is negative. So negatives need to go to the bottom, and it becomes a positive. Anything that's negative, we're going to move to the bottom, and it becomes positive. And that is that. Did you get it right? You want to subtract your exponents. And if they're negative, move them to the bottom. Now, here's a little trick. If you take a look at your P's, which P is bigger, the top P or the bottom P? The bottom P is bigger. Look at where my P ended up in my answer. Nifty, right? Take a look at your Q's. Which Q is bigger, the top Q in the original part of the problem or the bottom Q? The top Q. Look at where your Q ended up. on the top. So wherever it's bigger is where it's going to end up. Look at your R's. R is bigger on the bottom, so where did your R end up? On the bottom. So wherever it's the biggest, that's where you're going to end up. So if it's bigger on top, your answer will go on top. If it's bigger on the bottom, that variable will end up on the bottom. That's just a little trick. You don't have to use it. You can still subtract. If you get a negative, push it to the bottom. All right, number 21, negative 9 divided by 54. I can reduce that to negative 1/6. Went ahead and drew my long fraction bar here. I'm going to subtract my R's. 2 take away 5 is negative 3, so I move it to the bottom. Again, R to the 5th is bigger on the bottom, so I know that's where my R is going to go. S, 6 on top, 2 on the bottom. 6 take away 2 is 4. Positive, so it stays on top. T is bigger on the bottom, so guess where T is going to end up? It's right on the bottom. What's 4T take away 8T? Negative 4T, so I put it on the bottom. Notice I'm not having any negative exponents in my answer, and that's because I'm moving them to the bottom to get rid of those negatives. So don't say, Miss Master, you just said that was negative 4 and you put down a positive 4. That's because I don't want negative exponents in my answer. All right, so make sure you take good notes there. Move your negatives to the bottom. Divide means to subtract. Multiply means to add. Parentheses means to multiply. Use this worksheet to help you do your remote assignment. Now you're going to log into joinmyquiz.com and you're going to take a little quizzes. If you have time at the end of class, which you may end up with, you can go ahead and start on your remote assignments, which the sub can go ahead and hand you. The first one says, let's see here, Unit 6, homework number 8, dividing monomials. For Cohort A, this is your Wednesday assignment, so if you would put Wednesday at the top of your paper. For my Cohort B folks, you're going to put Monday at the top of your paper. This is your Monday assignment. And you will have to take a screenshot of it and then upload it into Google Classroom and then mark complete or mark done or whatever it says over there on the side. And what that does is it sends it to me on my end so I can check it and look at your work. Make sure you're in good lighting. Make sure that it is focused. Because make sure you take a picture of the whole worksheet. Some of you guys are only sending me half of worksheets. I need the whole thing. Phones work great. Take a picture of it on your phone. And if you have Google Classroom app on your phone, you can upload it straight into that app. Might be something to look into doing. Super easy to submit that way. If not, you can take a picture of it on your phone and email it to yourself. That way it'll be on your Chromebook. And then you can find that image on your Chromebook and upload it that way. And again, there's YouTube videos out there you can search on how do I attach a document in my Google Classroom assignment. All right, the next worksheet is called Unit 6, Homework 4, Negative Exponents. So if you're Cohort A, title this Thursday Remote Practice. If you're Cohort B, title this Tuesday Remote Work Practice. Again, same thing. You're going to upload your finished work into Google Classroom and then mark done so that way it will turn that in for you so you can get credit. Your assignments are due one each day. Don't wait till the last day to turn them in because they are going to be considered late. So Wednesday, do it on Wednesday. Thursday, do it on Thursday, so forth and so on. Your last worksheet is called Unit 6, Homework 5, Monomials, All Operations. This is a review of everything that we've covered so far. This is remote work for Friday for Cohort A. This is remote work for Wednesday for my Cohort B students. And at any point, if you guys ever have any questions on any of these, please shoot me an email. I am available to answer your questions. And then, of course, you can also use remind messages. And remember, my office hours are on Wednesdays from 11 to 12. And I email that link out Wednesday morning before the 11 o'clock hour. All right, so make sure you have these 3 worksheets titled so you know which one to do on which day and which worksheet to submit in Google Classroom on the correct day. All right, again, if you have any questions, please send me an email, and I will see you guys very soon. Bye now.